Hello, good evening and welcome to my Hornby Model Railway, Bedstead Junction. Tonight we'll be looking at a couple of locomotives and the rolling stock too. Now the first locomotive we can see going around on the layout is Clifford. It would have been Clifford Castle, but it was later renamed as Spitfire. So the locomotive we're looking at tonight is Spitfire. A Hornby locomotive are 2318 from July 2003. Now these locomotives are not tender driven, okay, like some of the previous locomotives were. These are actually got the motors inside the locomotive itself, and in fact they contain what they call the Type 8 Wingford motor. Okay, now the advantage of these Type 8 Wingford motors, in fact with any Wingford motor, is that they can be serviced. Okay. The more modern motors, which you see in locomotives, they're great, but they cannot be serviced. Okay, so that means that you're going to be replacing an entire motor. I mean, they're very long lasting, but obviously you've got the advantage here of being able to work on your own motor yourself. In fact, it's quite interesting how these are put together. You can see the Wingford motor down there, so it tells you how to replace brushes and springs. And I think very much the mechanism inside was also shared with the Hawksworth Countess as well. You've probably seen my Hawksworth Countess in the past. Okay. Now, as you see there, this locomotive is a very, very nice little runner going around the track tonight. And we'll take a little look at some of the other things to do with it. Now, first things first. I know packaging leaves a lot of people cold, but we got our 2318 Castle Class locomotive 5071 Spitfire. Okay, so that's what we're looking at there now. It doesn't have the block of ice packaging. It gives you the age of it. Of course, it comes with the polystyrene packaging. Box with windows, you can see what's inside, possibly. Well, I think what of these have actually is on the front of the box will be the actual card, giving you a picture of the locomotive itself, give you some idea of what the lights you'll find inside the box. Okay, so there we are. Now they are in focus now. Okay. Now this is one of the locomotives which I bought from eBay, and we're going to have a little bit of a talk in a way about locomotive prices, okay, and the way they appear to be going. Now if you imagine, I bought this near the beginning of the lockdown, okay, and I picked this one up for £60. This being virtually unused, it was kept in an exhibition case by the previous owner apparently, and hardly ever used. As a matter of fact, what the person had done, the previous owner, they'd actually removed the drawbar between the tender and the locomotive, so they could place it in the case, I suppose, in what they viewed to be a more realistic pose. Of course, I had to then reassemble that when I actually received the model. I knew that was going to be the case, but it really did. It came in perfect condition. Really did. Now models like these, I say, have got real advantages of their own. In fact, in life there's always plus and minus points with everything. Now we're going to have a closer look at this locomotive, and you'll see some of the things which we can talk about as well with it. I may even take the camera off the tripod in a moment. What we'll do is we'll bring it around You can see she's not too bad on the slow running. Ah, there we go. Now, this one's in the BR Late Crest livery, and this would have been the period of time where a lot of these locomotives would have received a double chimney. Now, one of the reasons why they had double chimneys was to get increased power from the locomotives, and also it was to be able to use lower quality coal a lot of the time. Okay, but these steam locomotives gave good service and good performances right up to the very end. In fact, these were probably one of the most numerous of GWR Express passenger locomotives. And to give you an idea of their usefulness, I mean, more than 100 of these were built, and the Kings, only 30 were built. The Kings were far more heavier, and they had far more restricted routes. A lot of the reason for the building of some of these Great Western locomotives was almost like a tractive effort arms race, and it was mainly between the Great Western Railway and its nearest rival to the Great Western, the Southern Railway. Now, at the time of the building of the castles, the castles were the most powerful locomotive, and they were trumped by the Lord Nelson class of the Southern Railway, and so the Great Western Railway wanted to trump them again with the production of the Kings. The Kings were a much heavier and more powerful locomotive, but they did limit their routes availability. I say the Kings only mounted to 30 locomotives, and the castles were far more numerous than that. Okay, what I'm going to do is we're going to bring her back under power again and let her go around a little bit more. You can see how she pulls away as well. Not bad. Now, the coaches it's putting are pardon me, Hornby Great Western Chocolate and Cream coaches. Now, these particular coaches by Hornby, this particular rake, I think these are, the front two are from the Hornby Railroad range. Pardon me. And then the other one's on the Star Class over here. They're all from the early 1990s. But they're virtually identical to each other. I mean, really, apart from the slightly different lettering, I think the door handles are picked up on the railroad coaches. They're virtually the same model. Now, they do have advantages in that against some other rolling stock, these coaches are slightly shorter. Now, on a layout like this, 6 feet by 4 feet, you're looking to squeeze as much in as you possibly can. And of course, you can squeeze in a lot more when you've got 3 shorter coaches. Now, you can imagine one of these locomotives maybe in the late 1950s, powering away from Paddington on the way to the West Country, full of happy holiday makers, possibly on their way to somewhere like Torquay, Paynton, or maybe they'll be going to Dawlish. Dawlish actually got a station right on the seawall, so I can highly recommend Dawlish as a destination, especially for those of you who like to train spot. If you're a railway enthusiast, certainly Dawlish is a good place to visit. Loads of trains flying through Dawlish along the seawall. I spent many happy hours there watching the trains. Now we'll have a closer look at this locomotive again. We'll see, maybe have a look out at broadside. And I'm going to maybe take the camera off the tripod, so it might be a little bit more wobbly. But we can have a real good close look at this one. Right, we're a little bit closer to the controller. And we'll see now. We're just going to take the camera off. Sorry about the slight jolt there. And away we go. And you can see, clearly see, the 460 wheel arrangement there. So 4 leading wheels, 6 driving wheels, no trailing wheels. And you can clearly see the BR8 crest on the tender there. And the number under the cab. We'll bring it around a little bit more. So sorry about the handheldness, and sorry about the view of the side of my bed there, with all the wiring and everything else. We'll bring it around a little bit more. There we are. Now we can see her again. You can see, perhaps not so well lit, but clearly see the nameplate there, Spitfire. Very, very, very nice model. Very solid, very solid. That's the thing. It feels well built. The dart on the front is moulded on. Okay. Now that does have its advantages. Okay. A moulded on dart. In that it can't break off. Okay, it cannot break off. And really, I mean, when it's going round, you're not going to really notice a separately fitted dart. It's got the lovely twin copper chimney there. You can see safety valve cover there. The whistles, the cab window picked out in gold. You can see there. 5071's the cab number. Okay. And round she comes a bit more. I might get my hand in the way slightly here now. I don't know if you can see inside there now. I fitted a locomotive crew. You can see the driver there and the fireman. The fireman's posed in such a way that he's putting the coal into the firebox. And I mean, the figures aren't adding the actual locomotive crew figures isn't everyone's cup of tea. I know that, but I find for me it just adds realism to it. I think sometimes when we're playing, I know we're playing sort of model railways, or some people might say toy trains. Whatever your opinion is on that, but really what we're looking at here is a model of something that exists in reality. You can imagine I mean, when you've got the crew in there, you can imagine the crew working hard to produce the steam to make this locomotive run on a railway, maybe in the 1950s. When many people went on British holidays. I mean, during the sort of mid-1950s to the late 1950s, we've not got to the sort of the jet set stage of things where everybody's flying away to Benidorm for cheap booze and sangria and bingo. And that's not being funny about the place, but that's what people did go for cheap holidays in Spain. Of course, guaranteed sunshine. That hadn't come about yet, and so people had to. People would have the likes of the British seaside resorts. Devon and Cornwall, all these lovely places available by the Great Western Railway. And really, it wasn't until the late 1950s, early 1960s that people began to buy cars more and more. I say the Mini came out in 1959, if I remember rightly. The Cortina came out in 1962. I mean, that was really a car that could really take the whole family. You know, had a big boot and everything. He'd take all the luggage and the family and all the kids. Off he went on holiday. And of course, that meant a fall in traffic for the railways when a lot of people bought cars. So you could say that 1950s was a really busy time. Up until the late 1950s, maybe that was the busiest time for our railways, just after the Second World War. And talking about holidays, certainly, of course, there was the Butlins holiday camps which sprang up around Britain. I think there were 6 altogether, if I remember rightly. But I think there's one in Yorkshire. I think it's Filey, Filey, if I remember well. That had its own railway station. But they actually had the Butlins with its own railway station. Minehead, of course, that's where the location of another Butlins. That's still got a train station going up to it. But of course, that's the West Somerset Railway now. So you could take the steam train potentially to go to Minehead, and then maybe have a stay at Butlins. If that's even today. Now we're going to bring our Spitfire around in just a moment. I'm going to have a look at our next locomotive, okay, and then we'll try and get as much as we can in for tonight. And we may have a little tour of the railway as well. I might go do a little handheld tour of the railway just to show you what's around the railway. I'm going to add more cameras, I think, to give you more of a view, because there's obviously the station over there and you've got trains thundering through there, which you don't often see, unless I do sort of the usual panning and tilting to get you on there. In fact, we may do that with the next locomotive. Okay, so we're going to run our magnificent Spitfire into the station now. Quick change of points, of course. I'll try not to kick the tripod. I think I just banged it with my knee. Let's have a look now. And we'll just take a look and see now. Right, okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. I mean, really good over points, this particular locomotive. I think we put the one of the station platforms too close to the edge. I do apologise for that. I think we just crashed into a platform. The perils of live video. Sorry about the slight mishap there, that was my fault. I put the one of the platforms too close to the railway line, and so the locomotive collided with it. I mean, that's one of the perils of having to put the railway out every time. You've got to, of course, place all the stations. I should put markers down really now that I've got the layout settled, maybe where the station should go. Now our next locomotive we'll be looking at is a Star Class. Waiting the platform for the right of way. Now we're going to have to change the points again. And we just bring her out to the station now. Now this again is a fairly recent acquisition of mine. Hornby Star Class British Monarch. Just put the control into reverse a second. See if we can get it moving. A nice runner, this one. Hornby Star Class British Monarch. Okay, out of the station. Gliding majestically over the points there. Just go into forward gear. And then we'll just change the points, and then we'll watch our Star Class go round. And we'll talk a little about the Star Class and how that compares to the to our lovely Spitfire. Now this one I think came out about 4 or 5 years ago. It was actually produced. They've come out in various guises. These, well, I think they're basically the virtually the same model, apart from that the names are different. I've got British Monarch. The latest one out from Hornby is called Lodestar, but Lode, and Lodestar is the preserved one. The cost of that one is came out about £160. Now at the time that sounded quite expensive. That was the beginning of the lockdown. Since then, prices have gone wild, absolutely wild, and in some ways, the way things are going, £160 beginning to sound like a bargain. Now, I know there's some other railway modelers might disagree on that with me on that, but it's the way that things are. I bought this at a discount. I think the price would have been about 150 quid, £150 normally. I put this up for about 112, and it was brand new in the box, or at least that was the description. And I'll explain to you about some of the trials and tribulations I had regarding this model, and also we'll be talking again about plus and minus points of each of these two models. Now, this one is more detailed in some ways. And it does have extra, more sort of separately fitted parts on it. Now, separately fitted parts are all fair and good as long as they actually stay fitted to the model and not separately fitted to the bottom of the box. Okay. Now, the first one I received through the post had three pieces actually broken off from it. The darts was missing from the smoke box. One of the steps had been broken off from the back of the tender, and also even one of the metal rails that went onto the front of the tender was also broken off as well, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So I sent that one back, and then the second one I received came with just one piece broken off in the bottom of the box. I didn't want to send it back, no one likes to send it back, so I glued it back on. I'll show you what that was broken off, and I'll explain to you why I believe that these parts broke off. Now, I'm not so sure it's a fault of the model. I'm not sure it's a fault of Hornby. I think it's how these locomotives are getting treated in transit. Okay. Now I'll just we'll bring her in and we'll have a little look at her. Now, after these couple of little false starts with these locomotives, this is now one of my favourite locomotives. Okay, the Hornby Star Class, and you know, it's a beautiful model, and I don't regret buying it now. Now, it seems a shame. It seems to be a trend. I mean, other modelers have found this, that they're buying models now. The prices are going through the roof, and yet when they receive them, they find there's bits broken off. And it shouldn't be happening. Either the locomotives need to be better protected in the boxes, or they need to be built better, or something needs to be done. But anyway, we'll talk about the problems, and we'll highlight what was wrong with the first locomotive that I received. Okay, so we'll bring it around now. I will talk a little bit about the Star Class, and again we'll talk about the Castle Class, because again it's all to do with the power struggle between competing railways. Now, the Star Class British Monarch, here she is, magnificent. You can see it's got the single chimney. I think they always had single chimneys right the way through their entire service. I think these came out in the early 1900s, and they went through to about 1957, I think. And then they were withdrawn in 1957. They covered a huge amount of miles. Many people said that these Star Classes were equal of a Castle. They were good steaming engines and gave very, very good service. Very, very popular with the crews. In fact, almost all of the Great Western locomotives of the time were popular with their crews. One or two did have their foibles, but these were among the best. The Star Class, designed by George Jackson Churchward. I think there was about 70 of these built. Yes, I mean the first one was called North Star, and it was produced in 1906. Okay, and it was constructed with a 442 wheel arrangement. This is when Churchward was experimenting with different locomotives, and he brought some locomotives over from France, and Churchward was one of the locomotive designers who was looking at what was the best practice of different locomotives in Europe and around the world, like the United States. Now eventually what he actually settled on was a four-cylinder arrangement with this particular locomotive, and he settled on the 460 wheel arrangement. And in fact the 460 was actually happened to be the wheel arrangement for all the large express passenger locomotives for the Great Western Railway, and certainly for the mixed traffic locomotives as well. The 460. There were the 260 moguls designed by Churchward. They were very, very popular, but some of those were actually converted into manors and halls, as far as Granges. Sorry, so some of the 260s were changed into 460 Granges. And obviously, we're looking at the Star Class now. Again, it's in British Rail livery, but it's with the early crest. And we're going to bring it around to have a closer look now. Very, very nice runner. I mean, it's a shame that it came damaged in the box. You know, we don't expect this to happen to our locomotives. We'll just take the camera off the tripod a second. Not too much of a jolt. British Monarch, number 4021. Very, very, very nice model. We're going to reverse it back a little. We're going to come around the side a little bit more because we've got more lights on it. There we go, there's more lights on it now. Again, you can clearly see the 460 wheel arrangement and the early BR crest on it. Now the smoke box darts, for the uninitiated of you, that's on the front, and they're the levers that they would use to open and close the smoke box. Okay. On the first model I received, that was broken off in the bottom of the box. There was moving forward with the fault with this one, and certainly these are faults you should be looking out for if you should buy one. There's a little metal rail on the front of the tender just there, and that was broken off. And that was actually laid on top of the smoke, laid on top of the firebox. I didn't know what it was, and it dropped off onto the floor, and I lost it. Okay, that was gone forever. But it should not have been detached from the locomotive in the first place. Okay, that was part number 2 missing from it. And then we can come forward a little bit more. On the back of the tender, you can see a number of little steps there. I think you can see there down. One of those had broken off. All right, one of those had broken off. Now, I think one of the problems with this is that it was one of this block of ice packaging it actually came in. I'll take a look at it now. I'll put the camera down just for a second. Okay, we'll have a little look at our happy passengers there. Now we're going to run out of time in just a few minutes, possibly recording time, and we have to go on to move on. But we'll do it quickly. You can see a pad there, and a pad there, and they're meant to hold the locomotive in place when it's in this block of ice packaging. If you imagine, there's nothing really holding it in apart from this sleeve on the outside. Okay. Now what happened was that the first locomotive I received, it was turned in the package 45 degrees. Okay, so it was slanted. It sort of slanted like that. So it was obvious it had been turned round in the box. Okay, what it had done by being twisted in the box, it had actually broken off the locomotive dart there, and the steps on the back of the tender. I don't know how that got broke off there. I mean, that's something else, and that seems to indicate to me Sorry, just ran out of time on the camera, so we're just moving on to the last few short minutes onto here. I don't want to overrun too long on this particular one. Okay, so what happened was, just to recap, was that the various parts are broken off, and I can show you properly now. You've got the you've got these little pads here, okay, and you've got one at the back. See those white pads, and they're meant to clamp onto the back of the tender and onto the front of the smoke box. It actually imagine the locomotive had twisted round like this, so it's now like this in the box. And of course, bang! It had broken parts off. Not very happy the first time round. I to be fair, I did get an exchange one, and that one had just one piece broken off, and that was one of the steps on the back of the tender. Now on this particular one here, Spitfire, of course there's no separately fitted darts, and I believe that the steps on the back of the tender are part of the moulding. Okay, so the advantage of that is, okay, you might not have such a high level of detail in some people's eyes, but you've got a much more durable locomotive. Okay, but now that I've got one here now that's actually got a smoke box dart attached, you can see it just there. Okay, and all the other parts are attached now. We'll see if we can come round and have a look at the back of this tender now. Yeah, you can see it there now clearly. You've got 4 steps. The one on the right, the extreme right, that had snapped off, and that was in the bottom of the box. On the second one I received, that was the only part that was broken off, and I managed to get that put on with a pair of using a pair of tweezers and some super glue. Okay, so that's actually on there. Now you can see here, there's locomotive crew here, and that really brings the locomotive to life. Now it may sound like I'm being negative about this model, but if you come to buy British Monarch, okay, what I would highly recommend now, is that if you can, get yourself to a model shop and look at the model itself before you actually hand over your cash. Okay, I mean, I bought most of my locomotives off of eBay and other sites. I think Amazon's another place I got locomotives from, but there's nothing. I don't think there's anything worse than getting a locomotive that's not right. You know, I mean, we spend a lot of money on these locomotives nowadays, and you expect them to be in A1 condition when you receive them. Now, like I say, it's my opinion that this would have probably happened to this in transit. But we're going to say goodbye to you now on a more positive note, okay, with everything. And we'll say now that, okay, I've got this new locomotive now, second locomotive. I've added the crew in. You can see the crew there still. Okay, we're on the back on the tripod now, and I reattached the step, and I've got a very, very, very nice locomotive, and it is one of my favourites. It's one of the prides of my fleet, the Hornby Star Class. At the time, again, when Churchward produced this locomotive, it was the most powerful locomotive available. Of course, then there was always the race for getting the most powerful locomotive. Like I say, certainly with the Southern Railway, I mean, because you wanted to have the most powerful locomotive for publicity purposes. Really, you're trying to attract passengers onto your railway. The Southern Railway, their main locomotives at the time would have been the King Arthur class probably, and the Lord Nelson class. The King Arthur is probably the most common of them. Again, the Lord Nelson would have been a much larger locomotive, possibly more limited route availability. Now, George Jackson Churchward was the Chief Mechanical Engineer of the Great Western Railway from 1902 to 1922, and that's when Charles Benjamin Collett became the Chief Mechanical Engineer, who actually produced the later Castle. In fact, some people would argue that is all the Castle and the King is a enlarged version of the Star. I don't think that's entirely fair. I think that a lot of other innovations were brought in to these locomotives as they evolved through their lives on the Great Western. Okay, so what I do now is, well, watch your Star Class go round. It's magnificent Star Class. Like I say, I didn't want to sound too negative about it, but I think you needed to know what my experience was of buying one of these locomotives. But I say I paid £112 for it, and a lot of people have argued. Some people have criticised the mechanism. Other people have criticised. I think there's moulded handrails on part of it. I think it's on the back of the cab. But really, it's still a very, very nice locomotive, and I don't regret buying it for a second, not now. Okay, so I shall bid you farewell. I say thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe, ring that bell so you can see other videos. And thank you very, very much for your interest, and good night. Thank you.